So, Houston, we have a problem. Been trying to figure out the tune, and I knew something wasn't right. This is a fresh build, and I just got to kind of looking at things. And let's wait for the airplane to go over. That just cost that guy $5,000, because that's what it costs to fly a jet into Santa Monica, because they're not supposed to do that. Anyways, this head gasket's leaking externally, which is kind of rare, and there's no water in the oil. But, and I didn't notice this because my harness here is normally right up here. I started seeing streaks down the side of the block, and it's coolant. So it's seeping, and it's actually seeping kind of along the whole thing. So what I'm guessing is, because I did bore scope this thing when I bought the car, and it's definitely been bored. It's 30 over, cross-hatching still there. It looked very fresh. Freeze plugs were fresh. But I'm betting, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say that the guys that did the motor probably didn't have the head gone through, which is unfortunate. Or if they did, they didn't surface it. So luckily, these things, the head isn't all that hard to get off. It's not a massive challenge. It's just pissing me off because it's going to cost money. But I'm going to pull ahead and take it over to my buddy Kennard. He's been my machinist for a great many years. Known him for a long time. And as a matter of fact, he did somebody else's car that's on the Vintage 6 forum, just out of coincidence. So anyways, we're going to pull the head off and we'll take it on over and see him. So I'm starting to kind of really get irritated here. Let's take a look at this. This is some good stuff right here. Hopefully this turns out on the camera. Let's see. Oh, is it that one or is it this? Which one is it? Ah, there we go. Anybody see anything wrong there? Hopefully that's coming out on video. Yeah, push rods aren't supposed to be eccentric. So we'll get a set of push rods for it too, and we're going to get adjustable rockers for it because obviously it doesn't have any. I don't know if the head was ever surfaced, but if it was, it needed them. It's going to get surfaced, so it's going to get them. Yeah, no faith in the guy that rebuilt this thing. I'm pretty pissed off right now. But you know what? That's just the way it goes. So we'll pull the we're going to pull the shaft rocker off of there. Actually, I'm going to get it up into number 1 first, and then after we do that, we'll pull the shaft rocker off just so I know where I'm at. So the head bolts are all loose now. I haven't touched the head, just loosened all the bolts up, and it's already leaking oil out of one of the lifter galleys, right where one of the lifter galleys is right here, which, well, it's pretty much all along this side. I notice it's seeping in a few places, and I haven't even lifted it yet. So that's just even more evidence that it's leaking. I mean, obviously it's leaking. I could see the streaks running down the side of the block of coolant, and not only that, but it was actually a little bit wet right over here yesterday, right when I was kind of really looking at it. So I'm not really sure how much this head weighs, but it's got to be at least 80, 90 pounds, probably more. I know a big block Chevy head, iron head's about 75 pounds. And, you know, this thing's probably got some decent weight to it. So I'm going to figure out how I'm going to get it out of here by myself. I got a few different ideas. Well, first I'll see how hard it is to lift it. But I'm going to get all the hardware out of it, pull the bolts out. The bolts aren't going back in it. I ordered an ARP kit for it, stud kit. Look, if you're going to do these things, do it right. Put studs in it. Studs are so much better. Unless it's an installation where you can't put the head on because the studs won't allow you to put the head on, you know, clearance issues. But yeah, studs are the way to go. So I'm going to pull hardware out of it and see about getting this thing out of here. So let's take a look at the next mistake that this engine builder, the previous engine builder, made. Not one of these has thread sealer on it, and I know some of these go into the water jackets. That one looks to me like they never even cleaned it. Yeah, this This may simply just have been bad assembly. Because, oh man, it's all about the quality of the work that you do and knowledge, basic knowledge. You got to have thread sealer on the ones that go into the water jackets. You got to clean the threads. You need to chase the threads. I've got thread chasing taps. I'm going to chase the threads in the block before this goes back together. And of course it's getting new studs anyways, but they reuse the head bolts, which, stock application, I guess it's fine, but they didn't clean them. That is not fresh goop that's on a couple of these. It's obviously, it looks to me like they never cleaned it. So that's a no-no. Okay, so the head is off. I actually just picked it right up and lifted it off. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought, and I rolled it up onto a fender cover here. So I took a bunch of pictures already just to kind of verify this, but we'll go ahead and we'll photo document it here. And the light is going to be really harsh because the sun's shining in just right. Definitely number 2 here had a problem. Very obviously was sucking coolant through. They all kind of were, actually, if you look at it. Well, first of all, the gasket was all wet underneath. Let's look at the block. That's the best way to... And it's been decked and it's been surfaced, both. The block's been decked, the head's been surfaced. You can very clearly see the damage, and the light is just... Maybe that'll help if I stand in front of it. You can definitely see every single one of them. It was getting a certain amount of leakage. Now, 2 was, I think, probably the worst. 2 and 6, maybe. There's 6. And yeah, there was a problem. Now, what I did notice, the only thing that I did notice that was kind of out of the norm, if this thing's been surfaced and decked, there's a couple of things. Maybe they didn't clean the holes. That's one. I think the other thing that's probably more likely here is when I pulled the bolts out, they didn't have 75 foot-pounds on it. I know what 75 foot-pounds feels like. They weren't that tight. They were probably, I don't know, 15, 20 foot-pounds shy. That could very well be part of the issue. Could be that they didn't hold torque for some reason. They didn't clean the threads. I'm not sure, but I'm going to chase all these. The threads don't look bad, but, I don't know. The head could be cracked. I doubt it, though. It's kind of leaking all across the board. It's definitely on this side. Now, it could just be low. This whole side here could be low. That's very possible. So I won't know until my machinist gets to it. But definitely, it doesn't look like it's had hardened seats put in it. This is a telltale right here that it's sucking coolant because it's clean right down there. So, yep, for sure. I'm gonna leave the head gasket on here because I want him to take a look at it like this. But yeah, we'll set it off to the side for right now. I cleared off a place on the bench until I can get it over to him at the end of the week. But it wasn't too hard to get off by myself, but it's been surfaced. I can tell you by looking at it, it's got surfacing lines on it from the mill. So, that all looks proper. That looks correct. Unless the block is out of true, which it was just decked. I can't imagine that it was. It never overheated or anything. So, I don't know. This is a little bit of a mystery to me. It could just be that it wasn't torqued properly. Here we can be hopeful that this lighting is a little bit better here up on the bench. So let's just kind of do a scan of what's going on here. Definitely, you can see that over there. Definitely leaking right there, though. You can see it. You can see that it's been washing it. It's probably pulling it right out of that water jacket right there. I don't know, man. Somebody didn't do something right. It'll be interesting. I hope that the block is true. It's been decked, though, and warp blocks are not that common. Not like it is a head, especially a head this long. I imagine these probably warp. that area there too. Something was up in this area. And by the way, this shouldn't be all wet like this. The coolant was far below the level. The oil, there's like a coolant oil slurry going on up here. Interesting though, that no coolant in the oil. I'm going to change the oil, obviously. I'm going to drop the oil before we refire it. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good one. Just want to show you guys something real quick too. You know, this has probably been shown a million times before, but I keep a couple old pieces of granite from a kitchen redo around. These are real good flat surfaces. But I'll put the push rod on here. See how it rolls evenly? See? There's no wobble in it or anything. Okay. Let's look at that third one over. I think it was number 2 cylinder, either intake or exhaust. I forget which. See how it's rocking back and forth? See, it's high centering there. It's a bent push rod. And some of them, I mean, it's real obvious when you look at them, but this one I could just see it just by rotating it. You saw in the video, but see how it's stuttering? Yeah, that's a bent push rod. I haven't checked them all yet. I don't know. That might have been the only one. I didn't see any others that were really suspicious, but that seems straight. Okay. Anyways, you guys get the idea. You know, get a good flat surface. Something that's hard like this is really good because, you know, it tends to be really true. It doesn't matter, by the way, if I didn't mention this before, I'm not reusing any of these push rods because I'm going to put adjustable rockers in it. Now, adjustable rockers on the Fords, like a lot of the Ford push rods, have a ball on one end and a cup on the other end. The non-adjustable rockers have a ball and a ball, like these. This is what would have originally come on this car. This is most of the cars, I think, 65 and up, I want to say, maybe 66 and up, had non-adjustable rockers. I think the early 170s and 144s, I think those had non-adjustable. Some of them had solid lifters in them too. This is a hydraulic flat tappet motor, by the way. And I pulled one lifter and took a look, and I didn't see any problems there or anything like that. The cam looks wonderful. This thing had no valve train noise, nothing of that nature. Quite simply, I'm relatively certain we're going to shave the head and, you know, we're going to surface it. And when that happens, we're going to take off. Quite honestly, this thing probably should have had them in it already. The block's been decked and the head's been surfaced. So that much material taken off, the preload is going to be higher now because it's fixed, right? There's no adjustment. So it really needs adjustable rockers. It should have had them already, but, you know, it depends on how much they took off. If they only took a few thou off, it probably doesn't matter. But, you know, if we shave more off again, you know, then it is going to matter. So, and well, I got a bent push rod anyway, so I want to do it right. So let's just have a goal of making this video just impossibly long. But I do want to cover some of this stuff because, you know, I'm finding I'm having to do some research here that some folks have the answers to, but I want it to be really obvious. So, you know, ARP does have a head stud for this thing, head stud kit. Now, going to ARP's website, I wasn't able to find that. And this is vintage inlines. They're pretty well known for inline 6 stuff. You know, it's not real popular. You know, you can find anything for a V8 at Summit, but man, try and find this stuff. So I'm assuming that this is a special kit because it's not on the ARP website. I didn't call them, but everybody says that this is the kit to get for the 170, 200 series, 250 series. The one that ARP shows, I'm hearing or I'm reading that the studs are too long, and that these are the correct ones. So I went ahead and I ordered these. I don't know when I'm going to have them, but, you know, the head's not going to be done for a couple of weeks anyways. And this guy that owns Vintage Inlines, I think his name is Matt. He's like a one-man show, and he's on vacation. So at any rate, I ordered these through them. Not exactly a cheap date either, but you know what, at this point, it, this car was supposed to be a turnkey thing, and it's been anything but that's okay. So that's those. Next thing I'm going to do is, while I'm in there, I'm going to replace some of the other hardware. Although the hardware for the exhaust manifold's new, but I'm going to see if ARP makes stuff for it. Look, I really like ARP hardware. I wasn't going to waste that kind of money on this thing, but while I've got it apart, I mean, certainly for the head bolts or the head studs, first of all, I think I mentioned it before, always use studs if you can, but certainly for those, you want ARP stuff. I've never seen a higher quality fastener than ARP, ever. Hands down, they make the nicest fasteners out of anybody. So the thermostat housing, somebody like mixed and matched the hardware for it, and so I don't know. If I've got the thing apart, I'm going to do it right. So let me see if I can find the other stuff, and if it is, I'll put it in here. If the next clip doesn't have it, it means I didn't find it. Just real quick, this is what I'm talking about. They mixed and matched some random hardware in the thermostat housing. And this is a replacement because I'm pretty sure that the Ford Motor Company one wasn't made in China, and it would probably say FOMOCO on it. So let's show you the new hardware. So this one is Hecho in Mexico, which is infinitely better in my opinion. 4 Seasons, I think. There it is. Boy, finally, get it right for you there. This is a new thermostat housing. It's aluminum one, which is nice. So it's a new aluminum cast housing, and then I got some ARP hardware for it. Now my car's a power steering car. Power steering originally had a smog pump. And that bracket mounts in between right here on the front of the thermostat housing. So I have 2 sizes of hardware here because of it. This is 1 3/4 right here, and this is 1 1/2 right here. These are stainless ARP bolts. This is just exactly what you want. I'm also finding the thermostat fits in this housing a whole lot better. It's very loose in the other one. It was floating around. And somebody had, on the original thermostat housing, they had put silicone in here along the inner lip to hold the thermostat in. And then they had a paper gasket on the outside, which is correct. But why would you do that? The thermostat doesn't need to seal in here. Actually, as a matter of fact, you want it to bleed a little bit. That way air comes out. So the thermostat's not supposed to be sealed inside this lip. So, just note that. But anyways, if you don't have power steering, I'm guessing 1 1/2 probably work for you. But if you do have power steering, this one right here, right there, that one needs to be 1 3/4. So we're just doing some quick checks here while we wait to be able to get the head rebuilt. I haven't cleaned the head off real well yet, but I did check it in the areas that didn't have carbon on them, and it's the head's within 1 1/2 thou. So, anyways, I did want to show this because there's some people that don't know this. I think there's videos out there on this, but I know a lot of folks watch my channel that are new or don't have a whole lot of experience doing engine building, or this is just good information for everyone. So that's a straight edge, and that's actually a real machinist straight edge. It's perfectly flat, and I'll show you what the bottom of it looks like in a second. But I've got it laid across the surface here. So the Ford service manual doesn't actually give a spec for the flatness of the block, but they do for the head. And the head's it's got a pretty wide range. I was surprised. It allows 3 to 7 thousandths, I think, across the surface. The block is almost always going to be tighter than that, just because the block is much more substantial than the head. The heads have way more tendency to warp than the blocks do. But we're going to check the block anyways. I can tell this was recently decked when it was rebuilt, and I know that it's tight. Blocks are frequently within a thou, at least when I've checked them. But this is how you do it. You lay the straight edge across it, and you do it in a lot of different places. I've got it just in a position right now that's good for us to see it. You want to obviously make sure that your pistons aren't proud of the deck surface, not that they ever should be. Sometimes it depends on how an engine's set up. On a stock engine like this, they're not going to be, I forget what the term for it is, but where the pistons actually protrude past the deck. because you want to make sure you got it, clean, and nothing's going to hold the straight edge up or give you a false check. But so this is a feeler gauge, and this is, like I said, 1.5 thousandths. It's actually the thinnest one that I own, and we're just going to check it here. And what you want to do is just make sure that you can't get it underneath anywhere. Now, I would expect you could probably on the block, I'd feel comfortable at 2 thousandths, a 2 thousandths gap. But as you can see, I can feel it just I can just barely get the tip of it in right there. So we know that we're sub 1.5 thou. So that's real good. Yeah, I can just barely, I can almost get it in. So that's, I'd say we're at 1.5 thou right here. And that's pretty darn good for across the surface. That is absolutely acceptable. So what we want to do is just kind of pick a few different places that we're going to check it. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to check it this way because I still have the exhaust manifold in here, and I don't have a shorter straight edge. But I'm more concerned. I'm not so concerned about it this direction because it's such a short run. I'm more concerned about the longer distances, putting it across the long ways. It could be low on one side and high on the other, I suppose. But I might, let me see if I can figure out how to get the straight edge in there. But so we're going to check it in a few places, like I said. So you just kind of want to move it around. So now I've got it spanning that distance there, and take my feeler gauge, and usually if it's going to have a low spot, it's going to be kind of it's going to be in the middle of wherever you've got it spanned at. So this all looks very acceptable, especially on a stock engine, not boosted. You have to have better and tighter tolerances the more pressure you're running. The more cylinder pressure you're running, the more critical it is. So we checked it there. This is where it was leaking, in this area right here. So let's check it across here, see if we have any issues. Doesn't appear so. So, yeah, this looks pretty good to me. I'm not seeing anything that's concerning. You really do want to check it in every direction if possible. I'm going to try and find a way to get in here, but a clue on this, and I think I talked about where it was leaking yesterday. Oh, and by the way, this is what the bottom of it looks like. See, it's machined, perfectly machined. That might be a little bit of, it's a little dirt on there. Obviously not substantial enough to cause a problem. You don't see them leak like in every single place like this unless the head is really screwed up. But it was obviously leaking where the water jackets are here. It was leaking here. The water jackets are on this side, and at every single one here. That looks like torque to me. That absolutely looks like somebody didn't torque it right. But anyways, I got this pretty clean yesterday. I used a Scotch-Brite pad. You're never going to get all the stains out of it, but you do want to make sure you don't have any high spots. That's why I'm checking it as well, because that'll tell you if you have some rust or high spots. I'll probably check this in a few different areas here with the straight edge just to be sure, but it all looks pretty good. So anyways, it's just a quick how-to on how to check the surface flatness. Oh, and another thing, too, if you're not familiar with machining, there's also what's called the RA when they deck these and when they surface the head. I don't know if it's going to show up. Yeah, you can kind of see it where the dirt is. These milling lines are normal. You actually want a certain amount of roughness on here. You don't want it to be perfectly smooth because then the gasket doesn't have anything to bite into. So there is what's called RA, and there's certain roughness averages that you want depending on the kind of gasket that you're using, and there's some science-y stuff going on there, that machinists know more about than I do. But so if you ever, if you pull your head off and you realize, well, there's lines in it, why didn't they do this smooth? This needs to be smooth. I'm going to go sand it down. Don't do that. You don't want it perfectly smooth. So that's just another little tech tip. Can you believe this shit? It's 11:30 in the afternoon and 405 South is still jacked up. Anyways, we're going to call this part 1. I just dropped the head off at Kennard's shop, and we're going to give it the goods. So I want to be able to get this out for this weekend, and we'll go for part 2 when we reinstall it. So we'll see you guys after that.